All right, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. We are here to talk about is sampling back, how emerging brands can drive trial at Whole Foods. Just a little disclaimer, we do not have an official Whole Foods representative on this call. They are a sponsor of Naturally Bay Area, but we're busy today, but you've got some great panelists who have a lot of experience with Whole Foods and are going to tell you what they know. I am your host today. I'm Mary Tarczynski. I am a board member with Naturally Bay Area. I've been involved in our community since we started in 2018. I've been on the board for the past couple of years. I'm also the principal of Parabolic Agency, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a couple minutes. This is kind of a part two of a webinar we did exactly a year ago. It was on September 2nd, 2020. And that was called Safe Sampling. And Angelica, who's on our MBA staff, will throw that link in the chat. And it's also on our events page if you scroll back. And I think I have it at the end of this deck. So if you want to know more about how emerging brands can drive trial, and you don't get enough today, you're welcome to listen to that webinar. I think it was 30 minutes. And we talk a little bit more about media and some other sampling tactics, not quite as much about in-store because that wasn't going on at all last year. But I'll do some setup and then you're going to hear from Kacie Holbrook. Kacie, you can wave at everybody. Kacie is the Associate Director for Interactions Marketing, managing the Whole Foods account. So she's going to tell you about how to do in-store demos at Whole Foods and online demos for online pickup. Paul Voge is CEO and co-founder of Bora and our Naturally Bay Area Pitch Slam winner and the maker of a wonderful sparkling water with herbs that I'm a huge fan of, having got to know his brand through Pitch Slam. He's going to talk about his direct experience in sampling at Whole Foods and some pros and cons and how it's worked for his brand, which is obviously shelf stable and the ability to do single serve or pour. And then Tiffany Hall, who's the trade marketing manager for Meatless Farm, is going to talk about what she's had to do as manager for a perishable brand that requires cooking, which you cannot sample at Whole Foods now, but she's had some great success with digital and social media, and we'll talk to you about that. I would be remiss in my role as the head of the sponsorship team for Naturally Bay Area to not thank our sponsors. I mentioned Whole Foods as a sponsor. Patrick Wyman, our local forager, has been very involved in our community and is a great resource. So if you are not a member of Naturally Bay Area, we encourage you to join. There are a lot of benefits. And once we get back to in-person events, you do need to be a member to come to many of those. We also really depend on our sponsors, the brands, the retailers, and the service providers who help fund our organization, pay for the software, pay for the staff, and the things that make our organization run. So if you are a sponsor, we thank you. And if you are not a sponsor, I'd love to talk to you about that afterward and get you involved in our community. A little bit about Parabolic and how I'm qualified to talk to you today. I've been working at the intersection of sales and marketing for more than 25 years. And I was on the brand side with Clorox and Kraft and Coca-Cola early on, and then I moved to the agency side and then a little bit of ad tech. And a little over 5 years ago, founded Parabolic with my creative partner, Jason Unger. And because we have a passion for natural brands, and we're really passionate about helping brands with a mission win through big ideas with trajectory, things that help you drive that retail sell in and the sell through. So we do everything from the consumer and shopper insights, retail insights, strategies, those big ideas, how to plan omni-channel engagement in-store and off pre-shop digital and in-store and coupons and rebates and things like that. And of course, execute and analyze all that. So happy to talk with you guys afterward or link in with me if you have any other questions. We are very privileged to work with some of the brands you see on the right-hand side of this page, the natural brands that are part of our community and some other locations around the country, and not only with Whole Foods, but with all the other retailers. And we've worked with them with many years and familiar with how they go to market and some of the things, experience with different clients and what's been positive ROI for them and how that can apply to your brand, whether you're a food brand or home care, beauty care, personal care, et cetera. So why would you want to sample? I learned this very early in my career when I was working at Clorox, and sampling is one of the highest purchase conversion rate tactics, particularly if you have a food or a natural, better for you food that people that's changed recently, but in the early days, we all remember the days of the cardboard tasting hamburgers and things like that. They've come a long way, but people still want to try it, right? And know, and if you have a great product and they try it, you guarantees that they've got that firsthand experience. It has a high purchase conversion rate, particularly when it's a, one-time buy. It's not a huge expense for them. And if you're sampling in person and you're the founder or you're associated with that brand, you can tell your brand story and really build that trust, right? And build that one-to-one relationship. So that's why people do in-store demos and sampling. And if you're doing a lifestyle events or you have some scale, you might generate some word of mouth buzz, right? Especially in the days of social media and people are posting about that experience. So what are the ways to sample? We're going to primarily focus on in-store sampling today, and the benefits of that, it's immediate purchase opportunity. You get exposure to the retail staff who can be your ambassadors. Ideally, you're leveraging it for a display or some merchandising. The downside is you're not necessarily collecting individual data on that person. Maybe you could do a QR code and get them to sign up for your newsletter or something like that. But for the most part, you have that experience with that person in the store, but you may not have an ongoing relationship with them. And of course, in the days of COVID and the pandemic, it's not quite that experience that you see on the left-hand side of the page. So some challenges right now. Other ways to sample are at lifestyle events. And some of you might be used to sampling at races or cooking shows and things like that. That's been a little bit more limited. You are still able to get maybe into some gyms and daycares and maybe doctor's offices and things like that if you have a single serve sample. So there's some benefits there that it's more targeted and it's in context, and you kind of have the benefit of that, the connection with the provider and the halo benefit of their endorsement. But it can be hard to get individual data on those. And of course, with COVID, it's a little bit more challenging. And then finally, I'm not going to talk about this as much right now, but in-home sampling, where you can send it to a home or they can opt in, and you do get personalized data on that one. Okay, so this is a good break for me because I'm having a little coughing fit here. I'm going to turn it over to Kacie Holbrook, who's going to talk about interactions and some of the stuff that they do with Whole Foods and how to work with them.
Thanks so much, Mary. Hi, everyone. I'm Kacie Holbrook, and I'm going to be talking to you guys today about some of our different sampling opportunities we have with Interactions at Whole Foods Market. As Mary mentioned, I'm an Associate Director at Interactions Marketing, focusing on our hosted demo program. I've been with the Whole Foods Market team for about 4 years now and helped launch the demo program with Whole Foods Market back in 2018. Previously, I worked with Southeastern Grocers, supporting their private brand program, with all in all about 8 years in the grocery business. To start, I want to share a little bit about Interactions as a company. What we do is create and activate experiential brand engagements, and that's how we connect with our customers and influence their purchasing decisions. Of course, we continue to navigate a never-changing retail landscape to ensure we provide different options for suppliers to engage with our customers, and those customers are super eager for that brand engagement. Today, of our service offerings, we'll focus on our in-store sampling and online sampling and digital marketing. As a side note, our organization has been running those digital programs pre-COVID, but it's really taken off this past year and a half with a shift to online shopping and consumers spending more time online. And on to the next slide, please. All right, and before I get started on our Whole Foods Market in-store demo program, I did want to provide some background and context on how we approached the relaunch of this demo program. First and foremost, the decision was made in accordance with guidance from the CDC, and while demo reps or brand ambassadors are in stores, they are expected to follow our recently updated demo guidelines and protocols. And although we're so excited for demos to come back, we totally recognize everyone's at different places with comfort, product availability, budgeting, and staffing, and we do look forward to welcoming you guys back when you're ready and able. Next, I'll move on to our different demo types. We have a guest option and a hosted demo option. The biggest difference between these two options is guest demos are staffed by a brand's own team, and hosted demos are executed by Interactions brand ambassadors. Guest demos are a great option for local suppliers who are looking to increase their store visibility with personal engagement. Hosted demos are a great option for national brands with extensive reach, or for brands that may be lacking demo support in certain areas or regions. Hosted demos can also be a good option for brands that may have recently expanded into new regions and haven't yet built out their guest demo team. And the next thing I'll talk about is lead times. For guest demos, it is 2 to 6 weeks out from the requested demo date. And then for hosted, it's going to be 8+ weeks out. Both of these options include access to our demo carts, and the hosted option includes talent, serving supplies, training, post-event reporting. We wanted to make that a truly full service offering. There is a small fee for the guest demos, and then there is a couple different rates for those hosted demos as well. And then on to our next slide, please. And then next, I will talk about our in-store sampling options. As you guys can see, we have educational demos, package sample demos, and open and serve demos. To give you an idea and examples of how these would look and execute in store, educational demos would be handing out coupons and sharing backgrounds, talking points of a product. This can be a great option for beauty or supplement suppliers where education is a key factor in their product. And then for package sample demos, package samples can be full-size products or smaller manufacturer sealed samples. These both work great for any product that is shelf stable, think cookies, protein bars, chips, etc. And then for open and serve demos, those are going to be demos that require minimal prep, such as the use of a cutting board and a knife to distribute individual single-use portion samples. Think chips and dip, cheese and crackers, yogurt, beverages. And as Mary mentioned earlier, cooking demos are still on hold until further notice. As far as the store list goes, exact stores for educational, package, and open and serve demos do vary and are updated on a need-by-need basis based on our state and local requirements. And then one other quick note on hosted demos, if you guys are interested in any additional branding, a demo kit is a great way to differentiate your demo and provide additional branded collateral. Demo kits are not required. We have everything we need to run the demo as is, but if you want to include any branded items, we can ship those to the store in support of your demo. Some potential options for collateral include coupons, easel back signage, recipe cards, postcards. We've even had some suppliers do stickers. So if you are utilizing interactions for your demo kits, what we do is provide a quote based on what will be included in your kit. And once you review and confirm, we're good to go. And that works for all of those sampling options that you see above. All right, and on to the next slide. We have our Whole Foods Market online sampling. This is a newer service offering that we've recently launched. And the sampling at WFMOA Orders program, it engages our shoppers through surprise and delight. Customers ordering through the online grocery orders with Whole Foods Market, they will receive these product samples and content, which drives trial, conversion, and future purchases. Each of these sealed sample packs are going to include product samples and a branded Whole Foods Market lit card. These sample packs are distributed across Whole Foods Market stores and handed out to customers while those supplies last. The required quantities of samples for the online sampling can vary depending on the WFMOA program you're a part of. And this program participation is based on Whole Foods Market category manager selection and input. All right.
Thank you so much, Kacie. And I know we've both thrown a lot of information at you really quickly. You are welcome to put questions in the chat. We're probably going to kind of just keep going because we have a good 15 minutes at the end to take more questions and have some discussion. And I would also just say that in addition to Whole Foods, some other retailers are doing this. I have a couple clients participating in the Meijer online pickup program, and I know Kroger does it. They have some pretty high minimums for the number of quantities that you have to have, but it's a great way if you have a shelf-stable sample to get samples distributed as a kind of a gift, surprise and delight for those online pickup orders. And then many of them do have coupon options only if your product is too big to sample. All right, moving on to Bora. Paul, tell us a little bit about your brand and where you are, and then also a little bit about your experience with in-store sampling.
Sure. So the brand is called Bora. On the screen, we make 5 varieties of craft sparkling water served in a 12-ounce aluminum cans. The idea is we wanted sparkling water that was more interesting in flavor with differentiated ingredients and a whimsical, fun brand that matched our kind of wild, fanciful ingredients. So left to right, lemongrass, coconut, peppermint, watermelon, lavender, cucumber, basil, berry, and cactus rose. The hope is these are flavors you haven't tried elsewhere in the sparkling water aisle. Today, we're sold in about 2,000 stores, Whole Foods among other natural retailers, primarily on the West Coast. Okay, so let's talk about sampling. These are actually both photos from a Whole Foods location in the Pacific Northwest. we, like probably a lot of brands watching this, we launched during COVID. So, very unusually, I have only done probably a half dozen sampling events in the January and February period where we launched of 2020. And then very quickly, all sampling events went away for many, many months. And they're just starting to come back. So as soon as we were able, we scheduled sampling events through Whole Foods, probably our fastest selling retailer, velocity wise. We did this two ways. One was actually through interactions. And that's actually somebody you can see on the left there. That's an interactions staff member. And then one was actually one of our own team members that went up to the Pacific Northwest and did about 10 sampling events in 1 week. So first off, there are kind of three main things that we wanted to talk about of what made that so effective. One was we sampled on days that we were on promo. So in both of these stores, we were doing a 2 for $3 promo. Typically, our product is priced at $1.99. So consumers could try a sample or two from the sample cup and then immediately buy probably their 1 or 2 favorite flavors for $3 and feel like they were saving $1, which really, really helped. Second, we wanted to make sure both our own employee and the interaction staff kept a lot of data so we could see what people said about certain flavors, which kinds of folks liked certain flavors, how many people tried it, so we could then verify it by sales that day. Whole Foods fortunately provides you with a lot of in-store data scanning at the register. And that was really helpful for seeing not only what was our spike kind of the week of the sampling and the week after, but now a few weeks later, how did that kind of change our baseline customer? There's a great study that I think Vitamin Water did. It was soon after Pepsi, if I'm saying that right, if I'm remembering right, Pepsi bought them, where they demoed in the same stores for a long time within a chain. So if it's a chain like Whole Foods, there are 21 stores in the Pacific Northwest. We actually find it's better to sample in kind of your 5 best stores over and over and over again than it is to spread out the sampling so you can really penetrate in that one store, kind of the mind share of those customers. So now a few weeks later, we see kind of how our average velocity off promo bumped up. And we'll probably go back and sample in those exact same stores in Seattle and Portland here in the next couple of months. Okay, I missed a couple of things for sure. One was what I said at the top of we both use interactions and use our own employee. And there are pros and cons to that approach. So forgive me, Kacie, for saying any cons about interactions whatsoever. But for sure, your own employee will know more about your brand than any interaction staff member. So you can supply interactions with, I'll say like fairly basic things about your brand. They can tell a little bit about selling points. Of course, these staff members that they employ know a lot about the natural products industry. But for us, I asked James, is the member of our team that did these sampling events. He got questions like, hey, is there citric acid in this product? The answer is no. That's not a question interactions would necessarily know. Or, hey, which of these flavors is the most popular? Which of these flavors are not in the store that I can buy online? A lot of thorough product related questions, your staff member will be able to answer more than interactions. That said, depending on where you're located, flights to, in our case, Seattle aren't cheap. So you can generally save money working with interactions, depending on how heavy your product is, how long it'll take you to ship to them, et cetera. We found in our case, because we were already on the West Coast, for them to be roughly equivalent. If our staff members have spare capacity and spare time, then we'd probably do it ourselves with these particular stores. But kind of on a brand by brand basis, you'll have to do the math and decide what's best for your profit and loss statement. Finally, and this is kind of related to the photo you see on the right here, see if you can get them to build a display for you since you're sampling. So of course, when you're sampling, someone could grab a full can right off the table if they like the sample, but they also, for whatever reason, customers like to go to where you are in the store so they can see you in the set. How does your price point compare? All of those sorts of things. We tried to negotiate displays, and the last point is kind of related to this. Don't forget to sample to Whole Foods Market staff. We often found that those conversations went hand in hand. If you get there early, sample to the staff, usually whole can samples, so they like your product, they're far more likely to let you grab some inventory out of the back and build the display. Not to mention, it doesn't hurt to bring a spare t-shirt or hat to make sure you get favorable treatment.
Thank you so much, Paul. Yeah, and I would say that what we've seen for a lot of brands is that they start with just, the founder doing the sampling, and you start small, and you get that interaction with that customer is your market research, right? You
Absolutely.
See what they like, you see what flavors they like, you learn from that, you see what points they react to, and then, you might move, but of course, not only is it expensive to fly your employee to a different market, you just can't, once you scale, you just can't, that's not sustainable.
Right.
And finding talent in this market is really hard, or hiring someone and keeping them employed, right, full time, running around the country. So that's usually when people then move more to a hosted model, when they've kind of refined that. And then of course, at some point you're going to add some digital marketing to the mix, right? Because you can't always be full time, and it's very expensive to sample in person. So it's a perfect transition to Tiffany, who's going to talk about her brand. And she started during COVID and couldn't sample at all because her product requires cooking. And she'll tell you about what she did instead. Oh, sorry, I had a couple just quick things about, sorry, I forgot that I put this in there. The reasons to do digital media versus sampling is that scale, right? 50, roughly for the cost of a demo day, you could put 50,000 targeted impressions into the market, and they can be targeted not just by the people who are in the Whole Foods at the time, but demographics, purchase behavior, do they come to that Whole Foods all the time, et cetera. You control the messaging. So you learn through that market research process exactly what's going to be most resonated. The drawback is you just have a few seconds to grab their attention. But now with all the digital technology and interactive, video and games and quizzes and interactive experiences, you could do something like this, which was a Whole Foods digital campaign where we talked about the flowers and the ingredients and the brand and had people take a quiz, and then land on a page with Whole Foods. So just a little bit about, the setup for why you can use digital media to enhance your sampling efforts. Okay. Now, Tiffany, you could talk. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Tiffany. I'm Trade Marketing Manager at Meatless Farms. We are a plant-based meat alternative, and we pride ourselves on being sustainable and trying to benefit the environment one meal at a time, one plant-based meal at a time. Like Mary said, I started on with Meatless Farms when COVID was rampant, before the vaccine, before everything. And like she said, the perishable items are very tough to go in and sample. I even tried talking Whole Foods into allowing me to sample in the parking lot or where they were, or somewhere on the sidewalk. I live in New York City. A lot of people pass by, so I was going to choose high traffic sidewalk areas to try to sample. But of course, that doesn't meet their compliance standards, and we definitely want to adhere to the compliance standards. So it left me to look for a different route to sampling and gaining trial and sales, subsequent sales. So the first thing I looked at is how do we look in the store? Where are we located? And I started doing customer visits, and I realized that your average meat eater, or what we call flexitarian, who doesn't normally get plant-based, doesn't really know where the plant-based meat alternative section is. It's a very small section. And so I launched a campaign digitally with the marketing team of where to find our products at Whole Foods, specifically targeted to Whole Foods. And so basically it's a locator that shows you where the product is, in what particular store, what Whole Foods store you can find the product. So that was the first thing, to make sure we were on shelf and people knew what retailer to go to and where to find us in the landscape of the store. Secondly, we started doing what we call Amazon DSP, which is the display platform. And we link that to Whole Foods Initiative. So what this display does, it helps you to target customers that come in from looking for the product right at the point of purchase, or with a high intent to purchase. And with that, we come in with the ads and the displays and the banners and whatnot. and advertise that we're at Whole Foods on the Amazon DSP. And the good thing about that is we can target the shoppers and we can retarget for purchase based on the data that we have from Amazon DSP. The second thing I did was Ibotta, which is a digital cashback earning incentive program. So basically the customer goes on the app, selects the product, and they see what cashback incentive is there for the product. So what we started doing is just doing our whole product range. On Ibotta, I started out with a freebates campaign just to get trial. And we did a whole marketing push behind it. So along with the Ibotta freebates push was another freebates marketing campaign that surrounded that. So basically we just integrated the marketing tactics with Ibotta. We did a hot grill summer campaign and our velocity spiked by 3 times. So Ibotta is a very powerful tool. Another powerful tool we did was Social Nature, which is a virtual sampling company. What they do is they go out, they recruit these people who are enthusiastic about plant-based meat alternatives or plant-based period. And they recruit the people to go out, they give them vouchers to go to Whole Foods, get the product, the customer samples, and then they go back to the Social Nature website to post their reviews. Valuable, very valuable in that 1, we're gaining trial, 2, they're in the store, so that's beneficial for both Meatless Farms and Whole Foods, because while they're in there, we hope they pick up some grounds and maybe taco shells to make a complete meal. And also the reviews and the insights that you get from Social Nature are phenomenal. And we use those to build into sales stories with potential retailers that we want to distribute in. So those are 3 of the key ways that I use to gain, 1, to let customers know where we're at, and 2, now that you know where we're at, here's where to get us in gain trial and retarget them with coupons as well. So I'm still on the back end with Social Nature, Amazon, Ibotta, retargeting the people that come in with these new user rewards. So for example, if I offered them a rebate, the second wave of promotion would be to now offer that customer a 50% off discount if they repurchase. So that's just an example of a tactic we would use. So again, there's ways of working around if you have a perishable item, if you can't get in a sample, there's ways to work around it digitally. And if you are able to sample in store, these are still powerful tools to target customers that wouldn't otherwise be in the store or wouldn't know about your product.
Great. Thank you so much, Tiffany. And yes, Social Nature, like Parabolic, is a sponsor of Naturally Bay Area. So really, and we highlighted them also last year. So you can contact them to learn a little bit more. Sounds like several brands, especially when it's early on and you're trying to get your product in front of people, a very cost-effective way to do that and get some learnings and some one-to-one relationships as well. Also important to integrate your messaging to make sure your messaging is consistent. You don't, most emerging brands don't have big budgets, so make sure the tactics you are doing are working hardest for you and are integrated, and measure everything. And I won't go into this in a whole lot of detail, but the slides will be posted after the event. And you want to look at, like Paul said, that the cost ended up being maybe about the same, but there was pros and cons to the different ways. You want to look at your fixed costs for sampling, and then your variable costs, your cost of goods, your cups, your things like that, or fixed if you hire a full-time brand ambassador. How many people are buying it? Look at the tallies from that day and look at your cost per unit moved, your cost per acquisition, right? If there's other things that are involved, when you get someone to buy on your website, if you're e-com like Bora, how much did it cost you to get someone to make that repurchase? How likely are they to repurchase? We've talked about repeat rate, frequency, transaction side, because that allows you to figure out if it costs you, a few bucks to be, or $10 or whatever it costs you to get a new customer, then, you know, how many times are they going to buy within a year, loyalty rate, et cetera. You can spend more to get that customer if there's higher loyalty. For my client Walida, which is skincare, you know, those are higher, not as frequent as a beverage or a plant-based meat, but they're higher transaction size, right? So they can afford a little bit more, right, to get a loyal customer who's buying, you know, a few $100s of beauty products a year. How many people are they referring, right? If you're doing Amazon and other search advertising, you know, you can find out what % are new to brand when you're advertising. Are you getting new buyers, which everyone wants to do? You can look at sales lift. Paul talked about that. You know, especially if you do demos in some areas and not in the others, what does your velocity look like? It's always easier to make a good store better than to make a dead store improve, right? So if you have limited dollars, go where, you know, you already got decent velocity and try to improve that versus where you're barely moving. If you have, you know, e-com volume or sometimes survey data like through Social Nature or Protege or Ibotta, you can see what your source of volume is, you know, what are people trading from to your brand or enhancing. Once you subscribe to Spins or other panel data, you know, you can see what some of those sources of volume are. We talked about reviews, getting through Social Nature. You can syndicate that with Bizarre Voice and get those on your website and Amazon, other retailer sites. New brand ambassadors, you know, turning those Whole Foods employees into brand ambassadors for you, et cetera. Some brands have brand ambassador programs and use sampling to recruit them. And then just the other feedback you're getting. So whenever you decide to, I know as a small brand, you know, every penny counts, every dollar counts, right? So make sure when you do decide to do some marketing, that you really have strong framework around how you're going to measure success and how you get the most out of it. So we are doing great on time, and we have up to 15 minutes to take your questions. So just putting up the panelist names again, so you remember who you want to ask questions to. And again, there is a link, and Angelica is putting our contact information in the chat, and the link to this to the event for last year, which had some overlap, but a little bit different. We talked about different types of sampling then, and you can go back and view that if you missed it. And I'm sorry, I've been bumping around on the screen a little bit. Sometimes I had a hard time toggling between the chat and the different things. So Tiffany, can you explain more on Amazon DSP and driving sales to Whole Foods? I know there's some minimum spends required with that, so not every brand can answer that. But Tiffany, can you talk a little bit more about how you got started with that and how it's working for you?
So we just recently started Amazon DSP, so I'm still tracking like the ROI on what we're really getting out of it. But we actually got contacted by our one of our digital agencies that had a connect at Amazon DSP. So we were able to get an inroads in there. And so basically we're going into Whole Foods. It's across the platform. You get to put your ads up. You get to target your competitors. You get to in-store orders, you get to track the purchasing, we get reporting, we get who's buying or we get to track their journey to Meatless Farm, to buy a Meatless Farm, in order to understand what they were looking at prior to us. If it was Impossible, Beyond, if it's burgers, to understand that customer journey. And so it's powerful in terms of, because Amazon got so much traffic. It's got Whole Foods, it's got Amazon Fresh. You have everybody coming to see your brand, and you, like I said, the most powerful thing is you get to track that customer journey and see how you can capitalize on that and compete with your competitor in that space.
Yeah, thank you. Kathy had a question about, if you could only choose one or two social or digital media options, what would you choose? And I think it does vary a little bit by brand and what retailers you are in, but sponsored products are a great place to start. You can do those on Amazon, you can do it at Target, you can do it at Walmart, you can do it on Instacart. Most of the, through Quotient at Albertsons and Ahold, through, you can do it through, who did I miss? Kroger, through KPM. So that because of the growth of e-com, investing a little bit in sponsored products so that your product pops up when you're on that site is a really good place to start. And one of the easiest ones to start is Instacart. If you have availability at Costco, if you have availability at Publix, if you have availability at Sprouts, that's a good place. You don't have to invest a lot of money. You can kind of test and learn there. And then obviously brand social and boosting your posts, not super expensive, and you can start to build some awareness there. Pairing it with a digital coupon for natural brands. If you're in Sprouts, the Sprouts digital coupon program is really cost effective. And then you show up, you just pay for the clips, you pay for the redemption, but my clients get good redemption on those coupons, so they're pretty efficient. So those are probably, I would say, the lowest hanging fruit I can think of for natural brands, depending on where your availability is. There was another question about Ibotta. Ibotta is a mobile rebate platform. So people, shoppers go there to kind of, clip, activate offers. You can put some brand messaging in there. There's all kinds of media tactics. You can have video or just information about your brand. And then when people buy the brand, then they submit their receipt and they get a rebate on that. So you can do free baits like Tiffany did at Meatless Farms. You probably don't want to do a ton of those, but just to get some free trial out there. That's not unlike a Safeway just for you digital demo, right? Where those are targeted and someone can clip it and get a product for free. And then you can also just do regular rebates, $1, $1.50, whatever, off of your product. They generally want you to make it available wherever your product is available, but you can also pay a little premium and have it just be retailer specific depending on your budget and what you want to support. And they're happy to talk to you, if you go to ibotta.com. And then Tiffany, another question for you, but Roseanne is asking about, did you experience sustained lifts following your social nature campaign?
Following the social nature campaign, well, let me just say this. It's difficult because I did so many tactics at once. I did Ibotta and social nature at the same time. It's difficult to narrow down exactly, where the social nature piece falls in the Ibotta. But what I can say about the rate of sale is it spiked initially, probably the first 2 weeks. And then we had probably about a sustained lift of ×2 from that point on. And so also along with that, just let me say, it was a combination of tactics. It was Ibotta, it was social nature, and also on our side, being the TPRs or the promos that we were running. So it was a combination of all of that. And the lift is still sustained to this very day. Of course, when you do a free bait or anything like that, the spike is going to be like tremendous at the beginning. But the way that I measure the success is that where it leveled off at is still sustained without having the Ibotta campaign in place right now. I've tested that for about a month now, and our levels have still sustained, our sales have still sustained themselves pretty well.
That's great. David had a question about minimum number of stores regions. I would say if you're very small and just in one, like just in the Bay Area, I would not do one of those tactics yet. I would focus on those demos and that one-to-one interaction. And then probably social nature can be very targeted. So you can talk to them. I know the information's in the chat. You can geo-target an area for that. You just need to make sure you have enough scale, right, to find the number of users for that geography. So maybe I would do in the order of in-store demos and then social nature. And I'd wait till you were a little bit bigger before Ibotta. There's some setup fees and things like that. So you need to make sure you have enough scale to make that worth your while. Certainly if you get chain wide, Ibotta is a great tool. There's a lot of larger brands on Ibotta as well. And there's a couple of other platforms. I talked about this in the other webinar. There, Merrifield, and there's Protege, Tada, Checkout 51. There's some other mobile rebate platforms out there in addition to Ibotta. And again, the digital coupons through the retailers. Rayleigh's has a really efficient digital coupon program in addition to Sprouts, where we're seeing good redemption. If you get larger in the mainstream accounts, you might want to do targeted digital coupons so that you're targeting category buyers and getting them to trade up to your brand. Paul, why don't you answer this next one about investing in in-store demos with the Delta variant? Maybe you could take that first, and then Kacie could answer it.
Yeah, no, I'm curious to hear it, Kacie. This might just save me an email to Kacie later today. So let's just do this live. We had a we scheduled these demos in June, which in normal history of our country, that's just a couple months ago. The last 12 months, that feels like a couple of years ago. So when we scheduled them in June and, shipped product off to Interactions, and we're getting excited to have them done in July and August, I don't know when we heard the term Delta variant for the first time, but it certainly wasn't on our mind. I'm curious to hear from Kacie if we can try it again, because one, I would say we're of course being mindful about that if we had to switch to closed can demos. We're happy to do that. We've done that in one retailer where we actually set up at the front of the store and handed cans and asked them to go try it in the parking lot and then come back in. That was a unique case. So I would say I certainly anticipate some brands not participating as much in demos. If we're allowed to do it, we'll probably do it. Funny enough, just last week, different chain, not Whole Foods, we brought really long bendy straws so people could use them underneath their masks.
Oh.
So that's one way of getting around it. But it's a great question and something we've been wondering of. One, is it safe for our staff or for Interaction staff? Two, is it safe for the customers shopping? I would say, most of this sampling is happening like more than 6 feet away from someone in an open air environment. What we know about this being a respiratory infection, it feels pretty low risk so long as people are staying separated from one another. But again, curious to hear what that means for the retailer if they're going to allow this to continue. So sorry, that was kind of a non-answer, which I've learned to get better at answering questions that way.
I think, Paul, that people want to hear, from fellow founders and how they're thinking about things. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Kacie, do you want to kind of share your guys' point of view on that? And then there's another question from Erica about, making experience more interactive, if you want to answer that one as well. Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
Oh, that's weird. I don't know what happened. But yeah, that's a great question. And everything that Paul said, I would say all reigns pretty true. I will say that we haven't been having people holding back yet. So we're still full steam ahead. We have a lot of different things that we do in place to make sure that we are keeping everybody as safe as possible. We have those sneeze guards that are in the store. Our brand ambassadors wear masks. They have gloves. The samples are individually handed out. Like Paul said, it's mostly in an open air setting. So, we want people to feel as comfortable as possible. And I think we're in a pretty good place with brands. But obviously, if you don't have the budget right now, waiting till 2022, you could definitely do that too. It's really kind of whatever brands are comfortable with, but it's not slowing down, at least right now. And then let me scroll down to see what Erica asked. Okay, so a probiotic kefir. I don't know if that's a yogurt or a milk for that one particular, but a couple of different ways to make your demo a little bit more exciting would be some additional branding. Customers love coupons. I would say customers really tend to like stickers, and that's also another way to keep your marketing going, because they'll put stickers somewhere, someone else will see it, to really get you that visibility. We've had suppliers that have done branded aprons, branded hats, some other cool collateral like a cart wrap around the cart. Anything you can do to really make your demo pop and draw customers in is a great way to do it.
That's a good answer. I think we've answered more of the questions. Well, I guess about, I believe on that Amazon DSP, it's done through the DSPC portal, and there is some, I think it's a 50K minimum, if unless, yeah. So you have to be kind of a bigger brand to start advertising with the Amazon DSP. I think we answered everything else. So thank you, audience, for being so interactive and asking great questions, and really appreciate the panelists for taking time out of their day to share their experiences. So Kacie, Paul, Tiffany, thank you so much for being part of our community. And we welcome Tiffany, even though she's from New York, was a referral from the Plant-Based Food Association, who is here and also Kacie, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but she's calling in from Austin. I just want to tell you about some of the stuff that is coming up in a couple of weeks. We're kind of getting back to our approximately every 2-week schedule after taking a little break in the summer. But CPG venture funds, how big foods invest in emerging brands. So I know that's a hot topic for many of you. So I encourage you to tune in for that one. And even if you can't, if you're not going to make, if something comes up and you can't make the session, go ahead and register for it, because you will get the link to the recording and any notes that are provided. And then we've got some networking things leading up to Expo, which I know some people are dropping out, but it's, as far as I know, still going on. So there'll be a virtual networking session there. And then the Nationally Network is going to have a booth there. And then in October, we'll be back here in the Bay Area, and we're going to talk about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, building a diverse hiring process. I'm really excited about that one. That's definitely a hot topic right now. For Discovery Box, if you are a small brand, you need to apply for our Discovery Box program. We had a picnic theme, we've got a back to school theme, and we've got a holiday theme coming up. And then we're launching at the end of September working cohorts where founders can get together, or marketers or salespeople, you know, a way to interact with your peers. And we've also just launched an advisory accelerator program. So all of this is on naturallybayarea.org. You can learn more there. And if you want to have, you want to propose an educational topic that you'd like to be a panelist on, or you'd like to see something from our community, please get in touch with Jen, who heads up our programming committee, and we will try to slot that in either this year or maybe early in 2022. We'll just keep doing these Zooms until hopefully Delta's gone and we can resume in-person events in the future. So again, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to continuing to dialogue with you guys. Have a great rest of the day.